This is Kinefinity's new Universal SDI Viewfinder, which might just be not just one of the most affordable universal viewfinders on the market, but also actually one of the best out there. Perfect for the Sony FX6 and FX9, Canon's C400, or pretty much any camera out there with an SDI port. The first thing that strikes you when you first get your hands on the Eagle Viewfinder is the size and weight. This thing is tiny, and it feels right at home on the side of a camera. The most popular universal EVF on the market right now is probably the Zacuto Chameleon, and this is about half the size and nearly 100 grams lighter. That makes a huge difference on your rig, especially with small cameras like this FX6. It's nearly half the weight of the Zcam viewfinder. It's heavier than the Portkeys one, but it's a much smaller and more practical size and shape. It also feels very strong and durable with an aluminium body, and it's completely silent when it's on as well, which is great considering how close your face is to this when you're using it, of course. The display inside is a 1.3 centimeter 1080p Micro-OLED panel, which is calibrated by Kinefinity out of the factory. It's great to use, very detailed and easy to focus with. The optics are also very good. There's very little distortion at the edges as you slightly move your head around in it, which is something I've definitely seen on other affordable viewfinders out there. And it has a built-in diopter, which can be adjusted from -6 to +2. So that's quite a bit of a wider range than the competition, which is nice to see. Something Kine were trying to keep in mind the whole time when designing this was speed. They've built it to be fast and responsive. It boots up in about 2 or 3 seconds, has barely any delay to the image. Kinefinity actually claims 0 delay. And here on this FX6, I can see very little difference between the camera's LCD and the Eagle EVF. This is so important for a viewfinder. It's definitely one of the most responsive ones we've seen on the market. So let's look at ports. There's a 3G SDI input, LEMO for your power and record trigger, and a USB-C port, which is just for firmware updates. So there's no HDMI, just SDI on this. So this really isn't suitable for smaller cameras like the Blackmagic Pocket or mirrorless cameras. But if you'd be interested in an HDMI version of this for cameras like that, do let us know in the comment section because I know Kinefinity have been considering it. Now there's no power on board here. So no internal battery, no battery slot. So this has to be powered with the LEMO port, which is definitely something you're going to need to keep in mind with this. Kinefinity do make these really nice conjoined cables to make this much easier. There's a DTAP version and a 3-pin Fisher version. So on a camera with built-in power outputs like this Venice 2, everything is really easy. But on a smaller camera like this FX6, you don't have power outputs. So there is a couple of ways to get around this. Some third-party batteries, like these ones from Switz, have a DTAP port on them, which makes things nice and simple. Or you could add a rig to your camera, like this Tilter one, which has a V-Lock battery plate. Now most V-Locks have DTAP ports on them, of course, but it's better if the actual plate itself has a port like here, as then you can just leave that cable connected while you change your batteries. The viewfinder only draws 2.5 watts of power, which is pretty amazing really. That's half of what the Zacuto Chameleon draws, for example. And the LEMO input accepts anywhere between 7 and 24 volts of power, so is very flexible. There are 3 assignable buttons, or 4 if you count the record button as well, because that can be changed to do something else. There's a menu button and a scroll wheel on the back to control the menus, then underneath is the power switch. Now there's no proximity sensor in the eye cup, so you're going to have to manually turn it on and off with this switch when you want to save power. There's also no cover for the eyepiece, which is a bit of a shame as viewfinders like this can be prone to damage if the sun shines through them in the wrong way, so you're going to have to be careful of that. The assignable buttons are set by default as follows. 1 is peaking, 2 is false color, 3 is magnify, and the record button is set as waveform. In the menus you also get zebras, frame guidelines, center cross points, image flip, color bars, histogram, and anamorphic D-squeeze options. They're also working on adding vector scope and EL zone as well. Unfortunately though, you don't get LUTs here. So you're going to have to do that via the camera if you're working with a log workflow. So I mentioned the record button is by default set to trigger waveform, which might seem strange at first, but I think this does make sense, as the majority of people buying this will be using it with a camera like the FX6 and powering it for DTAB. To use the record button as intended, you're going to need to be using that Fisher RS cable, and your camera of course needs to have the Fisher RS port on the body. So that would be, an Arri, a Venice, one of Red's XL cameras, or actually any of Kinefinity's own cameras, they all have an RS port on them. But on one of those cameras, it does work really well. You can trigger recording from the viewfinder and it's really responsive. And the tally lights light up on the viewfinder, including the whole glowing logo on the back, which looks very smart. You can, of course, turn off this whole glowing logo, both the white and the red when it's recording, in the menus if you prefer. To mount the EVF to your camera itself, there are lots of options. On the side of the viewfinder is this mounting plate. In the middle is a standard 1/4 inch screw thread, and on the outside is a standard Arri rosette. So with these, you can pretty much use any brand's EVF mount out of the box. In the middle though is Kinefinity's own quick lock mount. And this is the same system they use on their cameras to quickly connect their monitors. And here it's used for this mini mount arm that they include in the optional kit version. It is really nice and simple and low profile, and it just attaches with a simple 1/4 inch screw thread onto your camera. Now it's not going to be as flexible as most third-party EVF mounts out there of course, but for a lot of people, this is going to get the job done just fine for them. Then there's the price. This is priced in between the Sakuto Chameleon and the Portkeys. And there's actually a 10% pre-order promotion as well, which is running until the 4th of August. So I think this is a very appealing price for what you're getting here. There really aren't that many good universal EVFs on the market. And so it is so refreshing to see one that is this good come out. In my opinion, if you own an SDI camera and you don't already have a decent EVF option, this should definitely be on your list to consider, as it just makes such a difference to your work and is a big step up from using just the LCD screen or even a loop on that LCD screen. But let us know what you think of the Kinefinity Eagle SDI EVF in the comments section, and if you want to order one for your own work, then head over to proev.co.uk. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next one.